It's a small town jukebox rock and roll. Yeah, like Coltrane playing when it hits your soul. Get the whole thing shaking when we hit the floor. Yeah, we're just getting started. Let's see where it goes. Harder than the summer. Harder than the summer. Feeling the heat. We got everybody burning at 100 degrees. Harder than the summer. You know what I mean. It's that old school drop top, won't let you down. It's that hush, hush, here it comes, talk of the town. Make your head stand up and your chin hit the ground. Get you all fired up, keep working it out. Harder than the summer. Harder than the summer. Feeling the heat. We got everybody burning at 100 degrees. Harder than the summer. You know what I mean. Harder than the summer and I'm feeling the heat. Harder than the summer and you know what I mean. Harder than the summer and I'm feeling the heat. Harder than the summer. Harder than the summer. Harder than the summer. Harder than the summer. I'm feeling the heat. We got everybody burning at 100 degrees. Harder than the summer. You know what I mean. Harder than the summer and I'm feeling the heat. Harder than the summer and I'm feeling the heat. We got
Hello, guys. Let me see this. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you for tuning in into Speedsters live chat. This is I'm Lewis, a cycling coach based here in Malaysia. This is a long form interview. It's like a podcast, but in a video format. So be prepared to spend 45 minutes of your time for a deep dive into a topic every week. So we do this every Saturday, and today with me is all the way from the Netherlands, Mr. Jacob. I cannot pronounce his last name, so we will get him to do that. I'm not going to even try. Jacob, how are you doing today?
Hi Lewis, I'm doing good.
Did I pronounce your name correctly, Jacob?
Just call me Jacob. That's good enough.
That's good enough. But how do we pronounce your full name?
Jacob Wijnstra.
Wijnstra. Okay. So Jacob, you are active in the cycling scene. You know, you're a very well sought after coach. You do bike fit. You are physio. You do aerodynamic tests, and of course, you also work with Beat Cycling. And for people who do not know Beat Cycling, it's a huge trade team based up in the Netherlands. They have a track cycling team that has produced 3 world champions like Theo Bos, Matthias Buckley, Niki de Grande, some of these big names that we have heard of. But you guys also have a road cycling team, right, with a continental team. So Jacob, why don't you tell us a little bit what do you do? Maybe you can introduce yourself to our audience, please.
I started out 10 years ago being a physio, and as a cyclist I decided to do bike fits, and that got a bit out of hand until the point where I'm now. I started being a coach as well, looking into scientific research in all areas which you can find about performance in cycling, as well as training physiology, aerodynamics, biomechanics for the bike fits. And that has led to the point that I'm now performance manager of Beat Cycling Club.
Okay. So what does it mean to be a performance manager for the Beat Cycling Club? What does that
And
entails?
I always say, I'm going to put that on my Christmas cards when I send them, that I'm a manager now. It sounds really interesting, but it's nothing else than everything that has to do with performance I have to look at. And that goes from what nutrition do we use from our nutrition sponsor, until what training camps do we do and what's the training program in that training camp, to data analysis of the races we do with the road team then. So everything basically around performance and health, that's my division.
Yeah. So how many of you guys are looking into that? Do you have like a team? Is this are you doing this alone, or do you have a team of staff looking into helping out the team?
Now, for now, I'm the only one responsible for that area, and I have a doctor which we can consult where we need. So we've got a medical professional. On the other hand, I started being 10 years ago. I started as a physio, so I'm also a physio, which I sometimes need to use. So that's basically the team. Normally, you would have the physio, the doctor, and the performance manager. Well, basically for now, I'm a bit the physio and the performance manager in one.
Yeah. So in some parts of the world, in my part of the world, that is a 5-person job, being a manager, being a physio, being a coach, looking into the nutrition, looking into aerodynamics. That's really interesting, because you have added a notch to your belt as you go along. I'm just assuming, did you start off knowing all 5, or you just start? How did you start? Did you start off with a coach, or you start off with a physio? How do you learn all these things over time? Is it step by step, or is it one shot?
That's always a step-by-step process. And I always say that when you're not moving ahead, you're standing still. And when you're standing still, you're going backwards.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when I started as a physio, I came up with the idea to do bike fits. And for that, I took a look in the scientific literature, combined with basic knowledge you have as a physio about the biomechanics of the body.
Yep.
And when you take a deep dive into that, I think you can come a long way being a good bike fitter. At least I hope I am. And from that point, where I started to appreciate the scientific literature, I also found some things about training physiology, more than I got in my physio school. So it kind of a bit moved into the training physiology area there. So I decided to take a year to find all things related to training and performance. And after that year, I started training people. And from that point, I simply needed a lot of experience training people.
Yeah.
And so it got a bit out of hand on that way. So it simply
makes sense. It makes sense. It seems like you are someone who can't sit still. That you're always pushing forward. You're trying to explore new boundaries, things that you don't know. You explore, and you repeated scientific literature a few times in our conversation this afternoon. Maybe you can elaborate on that. What do you mean by scientific literature? How do you use it? Why is it important?
I think that it's what I do. I see a lot of scientific literature, and I read the abstracts, and after that I decide if it's something I need, can use or not. It's not like a lot of people want an answer from a scientific paper in does beetroot juice work, yes or no. It's not going to be like that, because when I look at scientific literature, I look at what happens when a muscle moves. Mm-hmm. And if that's something you know, then you can start thinking about it in your bike fit. So you've learned that point A moves if muscle B moves. So the next time you see someone on a bike, you see, all right, now I see point A move, so I know that muscle B moves, and I know that from that, this is the consequence.
Yes. Now, we have talked about today's topic. You mentioned that you think about cycling. You think of cycling as a game, and how we should think like a gamer if we want to level up, if we want to go to higher heights, if we want to win. tell us what you mean by that. What do you mean by thinking of cycling as a game?
Well, haven't we all played Fortnite, Need for Speed in my time, Assassin's Creed, or you name it?
Okay.
Whenever you play a game, you want to level up, you want to get better. And
Yes.
most of all with, for instance, the racing games, you want to get better, you buy a better car. But in that car, you can, you're going to say, all right, I'm a bit not too good at steering, handling on certain tracks, so what I need is better tires, better grip.
Yes.
Because this means that I can be faster through the turns on a curvy track. Or you need a better suspension or a bigger engine because you're losing on the longer straights.
Okay.
So what you do in the game is you buy another set of tires or a better engine or another car or you name it.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the same for a shooter game. You buy a bazooka because you encounter some tanks. You name it. So
Yes.
that's how you look at a game. You start buying things or upgrading things to
Yes.
become better and level up. In cycling, it's much the same, I think, because if you look at cycling as a game and you divide everything you can do in cycling and look at it that way, you can see where it's the easiest to make some gains, to level up again, to get better, to be better. And sometimes you can't do it yourself. You need someone else to do it. Sometimes you can do it yourself. But I think that's for me, it works to look at it that way, to divide everything in different small pieces and look at every piece and what's the easiest piece I can upgrade now to get better, to level up again.
Now, when you say upgrade, do you mean by buying a better wheel set or changing to exotic bearings, oversized pulleys? What do you mean by upgrade?
When I say upgrade, I also say the easiest way to level up. And if you are at level almost playing versus the end boss, then maybe the oversized ceramic pulleys are the only thing you still are able to upgrade to defeat the end boss. But when you're not at that level yet, it might be your training, it might be nutrition, it might be your you name it. Everything you have in cycling, be it training, be it equipment, be it aerodynamics, you can upgrade.
Yes.
So if you upgrade your training plan, you'll be better as well.
True that. So, can you you work as a coach? So if you have a new cyclist, a new client or a new cyclist that's coming up to you, so how do you typically level up your athletes?
That's really dependent on the level they are already. Everyone starts at a certain level.
Yes.
When I get a client that's a semi-pro, we start looking at specific things. Usually the semi-pros have all week to train, so it's not that hard to plan 25 hours a week in his agenda.
Yes.
So we can work really specific. We can really look at what he needs to do, where he needs to improve. But if I've got someone who only rides for 6 hours a week and has a full-time job of 40 to 50 hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
and he wants to race in a Cat 1, 2 or 3 race,
Yes.
then it's going to be totally different, because what he needs is a better recovery, a better base, better power to make sure he can go full gas for an hour and a half or race.
Yes.
So this will be totally dependent on what the athlete wants, what the goals of the athlete are, and how he comes to me, what he tells me.
Mm-hmm. Now, for a cyclist to level up, you mentioned a few things: a bike fit, a better training program, better nutrition, aerodynamics. What are your thoughts in all three? You mentioned that you would like to look for the easiest gain that someone can make. It's like when we always want to look for the path of least resistance. It doesn't make sense to try to go for something that is very difficult. It makes more sense to try something that is the easiest. So what would be some of the easiest way to level up that you have encountered as a coach?
I think make sure you're good on the bike. So look at your position. That's, I think, for everyone at every level is really important. And if you have a good bike fitter who can do that, then he will make sure that for your goals, you are in the right position. Because every goal needs a different position. If you are a semi-pro or someone who just likes to ride twice a week for an hour, the demands are totally different. So the bike fitter you work with should be able to adapt the position to that goal. But I think that's one of the main things. If you are performance related, if you've got performance goals, so you want to race or want to be better, then another basic is your training plan. Make sure you're training with a good plan. Do have fun, but you can incorporate fun in a good plan.
Yeah, true. So bike fit and also a good training plan. Go for a good bike fit to maximize your performance, to make sure the bike fit fits into the goal that you have, and then look for a good training plan. So so for your clients, they can come to you and have both a good bike fit and a good training plan. What would be the next, beyond bike fit and training plan, what would be the next level in your opinion?
You might be able to look at equipment, but in that area, if I look at myself as a cyclist, if I want to ride faster, I know I'm training in the right way. But if I want to ride faster, I simply need to ride more. I only have 6 to 6.5 hours a week, and I've got a certain level. So I know that if I want to be faster, I simply have to train 8 to 9 hours a week on average. Well, it's not possible for me because of my work, because I'm a bit too busy, and because of my family. So I know the level I am at right now is the level I will be for the length, the future, which I cannot ride anymore. So this is also a way to level up. You can start riding more, incorporate more hours, more training in your training plan, as long as it follows a good plan and you know what you're doing.
Yep.
But on the other hand, look at your equipment. If you know that this is the level you're with the training you're doing right now, and there's no room in the training area to improve, then you look at something else. You look at the tires or the engine, like we said.
Yes.
Or the suspension. So look at the tire choice you have, the tire pressures.
Yes.
If I tell you that you can easily save 30 watts with the right tires and pressure versus the total wrong tire pressure, that's quite a big step.
It's huge. It's super hard to gain 30 watts in a few months, and if you can gain that from an equipment change, why not, right?
True.
Now, you talk about people who don't have time to train, and certainly a lot of people who are probably watching this channel may fall into that category, that they don't have enough time. They only have 6 to 8 hours a week to train. They have a full-time job. And you mentioned, on the other hand, you mentioned that to level up, we need to increase the duration of our training. All right. So, but how do you negotiate with that when someone who has busy job or a student, at the same time they need to level up? How do you negotiate, and how do you find that extra bit of time to squeeze out from them?
It might be an efficiency thing. So this is why I said you really need to work with a training plan. You need to work with a training plan which incorporates extensive training, so a bit longer trainings. But for someone who rides only 6 hours a week, 2.5 hours might be a long training. But also intervals and really high intensity work.
Yes.
If you combine those two, then you're already at a really efficient way of training. And the only thing you can improve then is a bigger amount of training. So from 6 hours on average to 8 hours on average. Mm-hmm. But keep the balance between long relaxed trainings and high intensity work, because that's your efficiency in the training.
Yes.
So that might be a level up in terms of training.
Yes.
On the other hand, you might look at totally other things you need or fall short on, like nutrition or other things.
Yeah. So you can level up in intensity. So if we only have 8 hours, but we make that 8 hours more intense than before, that is leveling up. Correct. The other way to level up is expanding the duration. If we are doing 8 hours, to do 9 hours, 10 hours, that is leveling up too. So there are two, duration and intensity is something that we can look into. And you mentioned a good point, nutrition, how to fuel properly. You have any favorite nutritional suggestions and tips? You mentioned beetroot a few times, so maybe you want to take a dive into that.
Well, if you want to be faster, take beetroot, but it only works on anaerobic intensity, so it only works on maximal intensity. So if you're going for a 4-hour marathon run, then you don't need beetroot because you're not running anaerobically. And also, this is something you might gain from scientific literature. They say it works or it doesn't work. I find beetroot as a really good example because I read a scientific paper which stated that beetroot didn't work on a 40K time trial, even though the guys that did use beetroot were, I think, 2 minutes faster on average, but it wasn't significant different.
2 minutes is not significant difference? Yeah,
it wasn't enough difference to say it is the beetroot juice, but if you tell Chris Froome he's going to be 2 minutes faster on a time trial of 40K, you believe me, you will take beetroot juice.
I mean, if it is placebo, it is still an effect, isn't it? If it is placebo, you think that you're taking beetroot and you believe that is helping you to go faster. That itself, that belief, may have account for 1 or 2% of performance gain, but
True.
Right, it's hard to quantify that.
The physiology behind it, then you can think about, does it work for me now or does it not work for me?
Yeah.
If you're riding a 20K time trial, you're going to be riding anaerobically, and we know that beetroot juice works on an anaerobic point, so then it might work. But if you're going for a 4-hour marathon, then you're not going to run anaerobically,
No.
so then it won't be working.
Yeah.
So this is something I always say, that's what you need to gain from scientific literature. We talked about it a couple of minutes ago.
Yes.
This is the way you need to use scientific literature, see how it works, and think about it. Would it be working for me now or not?
Now, for our viewers out there, some of them may be coaches, some of them may be athletes. Where would you recommend to check up on scientific literature? Is there what's your favorite website to get information like that?
I've got a couple. What I did, and that might be something you want to look at if you're a coach, download a program called a feed reader. Every scientific paper has his own RSS feed.
Yes.
And if you got a feed reader, like I use Feedly, you can type in the RSS link, and every time new papers come online, it automatically downloads the abstracts in that program.
And then the abstract is like a summary, isn't it?
Yeah, this abstract is a summary.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you are, you open the app and see, is there anything new from the magazine I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really easy way to find your literature, but you need to look at things yourself. I'm not sure what I've got it in my feed reader, and I can't even remember the titles of the magazines anymore because I have got it in my feed reader.
Okay, so these are scientific journals. These are not not GCN. This is not your bicycle cycling magazines. These are scientific journals.
Yes,
that's
so
the
for
difference.
It's really interesting to do it like that. And there are always a lot of scientists you can follow, like Oscar Jeukendrup, Jean Lemeur. Those guys, they produce infographics normally out of papers, and if you follow those kind of guys, then there are a couple others. Then you're easily on the line of the new research.
Okay, very cool. So we have covered a bike fit. To level up, you recommend bike fit, leveling up the training program, nutrition. Also, intellectually, we need to read more scientific literature, digest more, level up our thinking and understanding of the sports. Anything else we can level up? Aerodynamics, perhaps? What are you thinking?
Little back to the nutrition, because we almost instantly went into the beetroot juice. Okay. I think there's one important point to look at nutrition is that you need to think about what you're eating. If you don't know what you're taking in, if you don't know what you are eating, then you're eating definitely the wrong things. So if you just grab some things out of the grocery store and you put it in a pan and think I've got spaghetti or I've got something to eat, then you don't know what you're eating, and you're eating definitely the wrong things. So look at what you're eating, and think about, do I need it or not? I think that's the most important thing. You might ask a nutritionist, or you might read about it online, avoid sugars and things like that. But at least know for sure that what you're taking in, that's the thing that you need.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else in terms of nutrition? Know what we eat. What would you recommend we eat and don't eat? Just very, very quick nutshell.
The easiest thing to do is try and eat things that come out of nature and not things that were made in a factory. It sounds really silly, but it's true.
Yes,
because,
true.
Well, you can get rice out of the ground. You can slaughter a cow and eat a steak, but it's really hard to find a tree where bread grows on.
Yes.
So everything that's made in a factory contains a lot of extra things that your body doesn't need.
Okay.
And this is what I meant by make sure that you know what your body gets in. You need to eat because you need to fuel your body.
Yes.
Not because you like something. You can make it tasty.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about a body like a Ferrari F1 car, then we should not simply put any kind of fuel into the system, isn't it? If the engine is running on gasoline, then we shouldn't put diesel into it. It won't work, right?
True.
And if we put low grade fuel into the engine, we are not going to get maximum performance from the engine itself, right? So higher grade fuel costs more, and I think that in nutrition is the same. The higher grade food, better food quality usually costs more than cheaper.
Because the processed stuff is usually really cheap, and the unprocessed stuff is still the same price, but the things that are processed are really cheap. So this will cost more, but I'm not telling you to per se eat biologically or things like that, or go vegan or go vegetarian or something like that. Just make sure that you're eating something pure.
Yeah, so nothing processed like hot dogs or nuggets. Those are processed food.
Yeah.
Whereas like a piece of steak, it's a meat, so that is not processed. We're cooking at home, or breast meat, or salmon, slices of salmon, or broccoli. So things that are fresh as possible, not processed. Very cool.
True.
So we got that. Anything else that we can level up, Jacob?
Well, you mentioned aerodynamics.
Okay, yes. One of my favorite topics.
A nice, yeah, mine as well.
Yes.
You already talked with Dan and Ed.
Yep. Dan Bingham is coming on our show in a couple of weeks. Look forward to that. We spoke to Ed as well from No Show Connect. But you have tested some amazing athletes in the Netherlands in aerodynamics. Can you tell us who these people are? Are you allowed to? What happened in the test? What did you find out?
Obviously, for one of our riders of the track team, Wattage Gains and Theo Bos.
Ooh, both world champions. Yes.
Yes, true. Theo is a former six times world champ.
Okay.
And Matthijs now is 3 or 4 times. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you guys have all the sprinters in the world. You guys have the best sprinters right now.
Simply fortunate to have such good guys in the
You have
Netherlands.
like 4 or 5 the fastest guys in the world are in your country. So yeah, aerodynamics for sprinters. Walk us through what happened.
Well, if you're riding at 70 to 80 kilometers an hour, aerodynamics is quite a big part of speed.
Yes.
Because speed is a really big part of aerodynamics.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. So if you're more aerodynamic, then you're faster.
So what did you do with Matthijs and Theo?
We've tested different positions, some equipment, so just to see what happens. And after this, they verified things in wind tunnels and things like that. So it's quite good. Just to see what happens, because if you're on a time trial bike, you're fixed in a bike.
Now, help us understand this. We see that the professionals, they do this testing over and over again. Now, every season, they will test in the beginning of the season. And now that in the wind tunnel, because that takes a lot of time, they usually do that in the beginning of the season. And then now, of course, we have aerodynamic sensors like no-show. People are doing field tests as well. And that is done periodically. And some people use it for training as well. They can measure their effort in training. Why is there such a big movement towards aerodynamics?
Because if you can go faster with the same power output, you're winning instead of losing. So aerodynamics is massive. If I tell you to go 2 kilometers per hour faster on your 3-hour training ride simply because another helmet and another set of wheels or something like that, then you think, well, hey, that's not the 2 kilometers an hour. Then all of a sudden I beat my friends on Strava.
Yes,
it's simple as that. Because if I put another set of wheels in my bike, then I save 25 watts. 25 watts is the difference between 32 and 34 kilometers an hour on my training ride.
Yes, true that.
It's as simple as that.
Yes.
So going faster with the same amount of power is always worthwhile, and aerodynamics is a really massive part of that. Obviously, rolling resistance, which we talked about it already, but on the track, those guys are so narrow to each other that there's not a lot to gain anymore. So it's really hard to level up on that area. So we look for other things to level up in.
Yeah, in track, everybody uses the similar tires. I'm not sure what the Dutch team. The Dutch team seems to be using a slightly different tire, not the Victoria.
Just on the track now.
What do you use on the track right now?
Dugast.
Dugast, yeah. Because I think most countries use the Victoria Pista Speed.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys on Dugast as well now.
Yeah.
Victoria and Dugast are the
big ones.
The big ones, true.
Okay. Now, how can non-professionals like the ordinary triathletes that we talk about, people who have 6-10 hours to train a week, working a full-time job, how can they level up their aerodynamics? Do you have any suggestions?
Don't simply buy another bike. Don't simply buy another helmet because you like the helmet and think it suits you. I'm not always good at giving answers. I'm really good at giving people questions.
Okay. So what are some of the questions you like to ask cyclists when they come up to you?
What I want cyclists to do is think about what they're doing.
True.
So don't do something because someone else does it. Do it because you think this is the right thing for you. We've got one of the riders in our road team, Jan-Willem van Schip. He's a perfect example of that. He's got a narrow handlebar. It's 34 centimeters wide on the road. It's really long. It's look for him online. It's really cool to see. Jan-Willem van Schip.
Okay.
He's doing things totally different because this is what works for him. And I really like that. We're working on a new prototype handlebar with him as well. It gives him a massive aero advantage. And this is something he thinks he needs, and I think it really works well. It gives him so much advantage that he is really surprised no one else does it.
How do you quantify that works for him? How do you quantify the performance gain? I mean, before and after.
It's really massive because this handlebar changes his position. When you're on a road bike, that's what I wanted to say. When you're on a time trial bike, you are fixed with your hands on the extensions and your elbows on the pads. So you're in a fixed position, and the only thing you can move is your head up and down, and your upper back.
Yes.
That's about it. But when you're on a road bike, you can move all sorts of ways.
Yes.
So you hold the shifters on top at the tops.
Yes.
And you make your elbows go down with 90 degrees elbows. So you go. That's how you go more aerodynamic. You lower your head. That's how you're really aerodynamic. But if you move your tops, your shifters to a point where you can make your body almost as aerodynamic as on a time trial bike.
Is that possible?
That's possible.
You are saying that we
with
can.
UCI regulations.
Sorry.
That's tricky with the UCI regulations.
Now, what is the lowest CDA that you have seen on a road bike riding position?
That's a difficult one. I can't answer that because that's for everyone. It's so totally different.
Yeah, but what have you seen? A good CDA on a road bike? Sorry.
It's not dramatically low because I'm working on average with the bigger riders.
Okay.
So if you've got someone who's 1.60 m, then he might go to 0.21.
Wow, that's low.
With someone who is 190, then 0.28 is already quite low.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's dependent on the rider you have, the equipment that he has.
Yeah.
If you've got more aerodynamic wheels, if we were talking about time trialists or triathletes, what can you do to upgrade your bike? Don't necessarily buy a totally expensive frame set. Make sure your wheels are really aerodynamic. The front wheel, most of all, but also the rear wheel, of course. And make sure that your cables are totally hidden as far as you can. Those are simple things.
Yes.
You can buy maybe a second-hand tri-spoke somewhere for a couple of €100 instead of buying a frame set for €3,000.
Yes.
I'd give you the same aerodynamic gains.
True that. So yeah, so those are good tips. Buying a better front wheel, used. The used market, it's a place to find bargain if we know what we're looking for. That can give us massive performance gains. Now,
Things
sorry,
made in the past are still really aerodynamic, and it's really hard to beat those things. But you don't see them anymore on the high level simply because of sponsor obligations, and that's something you need to consider as well. Things you see being used by the pros is not necessarily the best thing there is. The best example is Rowan Dennis last year in the Tour de France.
Yep.
He wanted the best bike, but he didn't have it, so he decided to stop and not ride the time trial. The only rule you can apply about stuff that pros use is when you see that a pro is using something which he paid money for, then you know it's good.
Oh, yes. Now, how can people find out? You mentioned that don't use what the pros are using. Don't just copy the pros, but find out for sure what is best for you and spend your money on those things. But how do we come to that decision? We need information before we make that decision. How can we find those information?
Investigate it. The internet is a big thing. There's a lot of knowledge on the internet, and something that works for me might also not work for you. So that's the tricky part. But investigate it. Just try and find information. Look on forums about people that are using things. Just read about it, and if you have doubts, ask someone who can test it.
Yeah, true that.
If you are able to do an aero test, for instance, using a no-show with you or with me, that would really be worth your money, because if I can gain you 30 watts in your position or verify this helmet is a good one for you, it saves you 20 watts, you can't train that in
True that.
half a year or a year.
True.
So it will cost you money to do it, but well.
Yeah, you mentioned about helmet and what is the biggest gain that you've seen between two helmets? Wattage gains that you have seen?
If you compare a normal vented road helmet with a time trial helmet like you have behind yourself or I've hanging right here, it might be 25 to 30 watts.
Wow. But between two time trial helmets, let's say what I have versus what you have, between two time trial helmets, how big a difference do you that you have seen?
It might be 10 watts. That's
can be up to 10 watts for
10 watts,
just for on the helmet.
It's dependent on the head position.
Yes.
I've also been working with athletes that have to ride with that helmet, and then we don't change the helmet. We change the position of the head to match the helmet.
Makes sense. So if you can't change your equipment, you try to train your body to fit into that equipment.
True.
Very cool. Okay, guys, thank you very much. This is a very interesting conversation. Jacob, we really appreciate the time that you have given to the channel, to our viewers. This is a Saturday. I know that you are racing this afternoon, so we don't want to hold you back. And for our viewers, thank you very much for tuning in today. And if you're viewing this channel and you like what you're seeing and you have not subscribed to our channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the bell button so that you are notified every time we have a new content coming right up. And I will see you, all of you, next week. And take care and God bless you. Take care, guys.